And we are live, Bobby G. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me.
We are talking about why we left the Republican Party, and we think Biden is an excellent choice to continue to be our president in the United States. Is that right?
Exactly. So just wanted to get into detail about part of our journeys. On my end, I'll monologue about why I left. Victor will follow that up after I've taken all the oxygen out of the room. And then I wanted to get into a discussion with you about what I consider the real art of the deal.
Excellent.
The contrast between Biden as president and Trump's term as president.
And did he do any art in his deal making?
No, it's actually funny. The person who ghostwrote that book, the ghostwriter of that book, is actually deeply regretful of it. He feels like he's done a huge disservice to society in general. If you ever read his quotes, I'm not sure if he's still around, but years ago,
he's around.
Years ago, he talked about how just horrifying that if he had ever known that he'd have some role in creating this monster of Trump, he would have never done it. So it just goes to show more again, people who've worked with him and what they've contributed and what a farce it really was.
Well, I can get into the details, but I don't think that's what we want to talk about. We're going to talk about what it's been like to be a member of the GOP or a fan of the Republican policy and principles, and then feeling completely abandoned. At least that was in my case. But you're the guest here today, so I want to talk about your journey. How did you start off as a Republican and then make the switch over towards Biden?
Sure. So I was born and raised in the Bronx. We were pretty much just Democrats. With my family, it was just Democratic. Got to college, went a little bit more left. Actually voted for Ralph Nader for my first election. I was 19. After college, I started gravitating towards Republican Party and conservative ideas. I foolishly bought a few Mark Levin books and Sean Hannity books. I feel like those are the ones that should be banned. No, kidding. And I started just getting more into that. I felt that I was more of the vision that I thought could be better for America. Then I just started seeing holes everywhere I looked, holes. And it just wasn't, the party and the members of the party weren't actually holding up to these principles, weren't actually trying to attain them either. And it became less and less over time. When Donald Trump took over from the sort of Tea Party, the remnants of what the Tea Party revolution was, it just all went to hell. I mean, they don't even care about anything, the Constitution, limited government, any of these principles that make you sort of a conservative right-winger. They don't care. They change what they care about weekly, depending on what the news story of the day is or some group they can demonize and get everybody angry about. It's not a party that stands for anything anymore. There's no principles.
Yeah, there is effectively no platform. There wasn't for Trump in 20. There was obviously nothing to stand on 22 for the Republican Party. And I think it might have been easy when you're a new candidate. People don't know who you are, particularly if you don't have either a long history or zero history in politics. If you don't have a platform, people cannot critique it. But now we've seen what Donald Trump brought to the country. And I'm sorry, I don't think that I would like to go through that again, and particularly not as a person who lives outside the United States. We're all kind of mini ambassadors for the U.S. And how do we stand up when we have a president who's referring to other countries as shitholes? I don't know how to do that. That's just it's an ignorant thing to say. He can't even get the countries right. He couldn't understand the difference between Zambia or the Gambia and Namibia. So he just kind of pulled them all together and made it Nambia. And then you have the difficult problems that we're seeing in Haiti. And instead of adding value, trying to figure out how to help, he basically was in a situation where we're now basically attacking them for going through a difficult time already. These people who are, some of them are natural born U.S., I guess they call them anchor babies, and then take them back to Haiti, but they could always grow up in the U.S. when they have U.S. citizenship. At any rate, and having been born in Mexico, when he's referring to us as rapists and killers and murderers and drug dealers, how do you defend this as an American? I couldn't do it anymore. And the fact, it wasn't just Trump. Trump I've always had kind of issues with long before he was president. But the rest of the Republican Party stayed conspicuously quiet and has enabled this to occur. And now with this amazing, consistent assault on women's rights, I have to speak out now and make everybody that I know understand the Republicans don't stand for anything except winning, but they don't offer anything. And we've seen the horrendous returns of having Trump in power. So again, I want you to.
Oh, absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. I mean, you well said. It's really about the party you could have said was a do nothing government Republican Party. Now they're a do nothing but harm Republican Party. The only elements of government that this party right now enjoys participating in are when they can torment marginalized communities. That's when they get real active. That's when they start passing laws. That's when they start, filibustering and doing all these functions of government, is that when they can put their boots on marginalized communities' necks. It's not a home for anyone who's reasonable, anybody who actually believes that America is a superpower because of its diversity, that we're the mosaic, the melting pot, the best experiment in human history in terms of how far we've been able to progress in such short time. I mean, we're an open book. The U.S. became a global superpower with some of the most limited immigration laws in our existence. Donald Trump and this Republican Party represents sort of a white Christian fascism knockoff that doesn't have a home, that no one else has a home in, unless you are 100% on board with that, with slavish cult-like devotion to dear leader Donald Trump. It's a disgrace. It's not anything I could consider myself a member of. It's not anything. I was gravitating away from it as you were before then, because I could see the writing on the wall. But it was really come to a head in this version of the Republican Party today, coming into this election in November. It's quite clear what they are and what they represent. And that's not American ideals. That's not constitutional conservatism. That's not limited government. What they want is their own king to shove their will down everyone else's throats. And that changes depending on who they want to pick on. So it's just, I don't even know if you're a businessman, how you could trust this company, trust this political party, because they're unstable. Like, say they do take over and they want to have an authoritarian leaning style government. Yeah, you might have lower taxes, but then what happens if you piss one of them off? Then they use the power of government against you, Jeff Bezos. They use the power of government against you, all these other captains of industry. So I think there's a lot of mistaken belief that the Republican Party has some sort of future for Americans, positive, and it just doesn't.
Well, as you were saying, it's unpredictable because there's no platform, there's no principles that guide it, right, except what is convenient for Donald Trump in that moment. And, one of the things that was a big change for me, or just even if I was a fan of the policies of Trump or the Republicans, when they started to pass laws to try to prevent people from voting, the voter suppression stuff, you can't give them water, you can't give them food, actively going into neighborhoods and counties where there are clearly demarcation between Democrats and Republicans, and they only were using laws to make it harder to vote with trying to get your ballot, or trying on election day, you'll have to drive a long way so you can put in
closing polling stations, early voting, and drop boxes they've attacked constantly. The thing about the worst of the coronavirus election in 2020, the global pandemic election, is that all the systems worked. They did how many audits and how many lawsuits all across the country? So they expanded voter access from the pandemic era, the heavy pandemic era before vaccines and everything like that, where we didn't want to make super spreader events out of every election day. The Republicans did, but normal people didn't. They all worked, and so voting access is important. Like you said, they want stricter access on using your vote than using a gun, and that's kind of insane to me. Like that you can have a 17-layer proposal of Republican election integrity and do nothing while you see kids get massacred in schools and movie theaters and these horrible mass shootings that America's #1 in the world in, and to have no answers to that, but to have a lot of answers to book bans and vote and making voting more restrictive it's hypocritical and destructive.
Well, one of the other things that really annoyed me was, as somebody who has believed in the old Republican principles of limited government and trying to make sure that the government doesn't get into our personal lives. One thing that really threw me off is, how can you justify voter suppression and then voter subversion simultaneously and claim to be the party of law and order?
Election integrity.
You know, when we have all these different people, Trump's own cabinet members going to jail, and those that didn't go to jail are witnesses against him or actively refusing to endorse. They're actually quite vocal about how they do not want to endorse him, and if not, actively say you can't put this guy back in power. And these were people who were big time pro-Trump people.
Yeah, they worked for him. I mean, they didn't work for him for no reason. Obviously, but he crosses a line for everybody. Think about it from like just your potential cabinet members, who he's not named any new ones that he would appoint, but his old cabinet members are coming against him. But his business partners, he's suing his Truth Social co-founders right now. Getting into business with this man is a disaster. Getting into negotiations and business with Biden has seen the best American economy ever. We just had a massive jobs number drop today. 100,000 more jobs than they thought. It's 300. I believe I sent you 330,000 new jobs last month. The Biden way of doing business for America works. The Trump way is a chaotic disaster. I think that's why the number one reason why you shouldn't vote is that if you want America to be a stable and productive country, it's going to be far less so under a guy who thinks he's a king and a party that acts like they're his cult.
Well, I think you've summarized it quite effectively.
I have a little mini monologue.
Share them with us.
So a little bit of notes. I said why I'm no longer a Republican. I'm no longer a Republican because I believe in science. I think vaccines are safe. I believe that climate change is real and an existential threat. I believe there should be reasonable regulations on owning guns. I believe love is love. I believe bigotry is irrational and repugnant. I think Putin is a genocidal madman actively working on sabotaging America and the world. I don't think you have the right to negligently spread a mutating mystery virus, especially when your local hospitals are at the brink of collapse. I believe undocumented immigrants are human beings who deserve respect and empathy, not death traps at the border. I believe in labor unions. I believe in America's role on the global stage. I believe in 200 years of creating and implementing institutional systems that favor white landowners has had really bad impacts on non-white landowners. I believe Roe v. Wade got it right, and women's reproductive rights chaos is cancerous to America and the world.
That's a few things.
So my journey has taken me to different places on different issues and stuff. But when I think about I started jotting down things that I really, really care about. Representative democracy, climate change, women's rights, voting rights. It keeps coming up one-sided. It's not anything that's going to improve. There isn't a single situation, no matter how bad the situation is in America or the world right now, that will be improved by Donald Trump and the Republican Party in power. Not one. It's not going to be immigration. It's not going to be foreign policy. It's not going to be the economy. It's not going to be crime when a 91 or 88, whatever counts, indicted man is running the country trying to shut down his criminal cases. It's not going to be any issue that you actually care about in this world. Will be far worse under Trump and Republicans and would have been much worse now had they still been in power. And I don't think I'm not selling you a bill of goods. I'm not pissing on your leg trying to tell you it's raining. It's just the way it is.
And what do you think is going to happen if Trump decides that the election was rigged?
Luckily, he doesn't have the power of the U.S. government, right? That made it a lot harder when you had Bill Barr running his conspiracy theories for him until he got tired of it and just quit. He's going to do what he did to Ted Cruz in the 2016 Iowa caucuses. When Ted Cruz ran, he screamed, rig, 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 rig. That's what he does. I don't even have a lot of credibility getting whooped twice, beat like a drum twice. I don't think he'll have any credibility whatsoever when he does it, but he's going to whip a lot of people up who only get their information in these echo chambers, and it's radicalized a good number of them towards things like January 6th and other violence. We had to pass hate crimes laws because they were going after little old Asian ladies. This is a dangerous group that his hardcore supporters have done violence. I believe in it.
If Trump actually thought that the election was rigged, you'd have thought that a person who is president of the United States and has at his command all of the resources to make sure that the polls are properly monitored and that the voting system was safeguarded. But instead of actually taking the measures to protect the electoral vote, because it was obvious that in 2020 there were going to be potential issues or challenges that mail-in voting was not going to work right, that they're going to have all these different people who weren't actually American citizens eligible to vote, sending in ballots. All these different things could have been tested and prevented. But instead of doing that, he invested most of his time screaming that he was going to lose only if it was rigged.
Then, fun fact, as the COVID restrictions were in there, because this was the height of the 2020 restrictions, the swing states of the blue wall, so to speak, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, had the ability to count their mail-in votes in the same way Ohio and Florida and many other states do as they arrive. But those legislatures, run by Republicans, who would have guessed it, forbid the allowance of counting out those mail-in votes until after all the in-person votes were counted. And here's why. So you can say, middle of the night ballot dumps, what's going on? So they preemptively set up a fraudulent talking point for Trump and for Republicans. People on the same ballots, Republicans that got elected, aren't saying their election was stolen, are they? It was all a lie. It was designed to be a lie because he was going to lose.
Didn't he hire 2 different companies to help defend his claim? He literally paid people to defend his claim, and both organizations came back and said there was no sufficient enough fraud. Even there was no fraud to begin with. And even if there was
sufficient, like some random guy doing some random thing. No, there's no organized actual fraud, because that term is like, it could mean somebody who accidentally votes incorrectly, but what they were trying to make it seem as an organized conspiracy, a criminal conspiracy to defraud voters, to defraud the election systems. That never happened. His own, what was his name, Chris Krebs or whatever, he ran the Department of Homeland Security, said it was the safest election we ever had. Bill Barr was his lapdog. He was looking for this. He had the power of the Department of Justice looking for this. He couldn't find it. Trump said, I'm going to go with Rudy Giuliani and the pillow guy instead. It was totally a setup the entire time. And that's the number one reason. Like, if you were a Republican before that, it could be explained, it could be understood. When the man decided to take over, represent America, throw his election loss in the garbage, essentially appointing himself king, how the hell, causing a constitutional crisis with people he put on the Supreme Court. I mean, that should have been the sharp line, and it has been for a lot of people. People like Liz Cheney and I agreed for the first time in my life. Like people like Adam Kinzinger, who they cost their careers to bring attention to the facts that, Donald Trump did try to throw representative democracy in the garbage and make himself a king. That's why it was the most bipartisan impeachment ever. Didn't succeed in the Senate, but he got the most bipartisan votes ever.
Yeah, and how many witnesses were allowed to speak in the Senate? Do you remember?
I don't think they did. I don't think they called witnesses.
Not a single one.
No.
So we're talking about, it's not just being anti-Trump, which I am completely honest. I am completely against Trump.
How could you not?
But it's the Republican Party that has facilitated. This is Mitch McConnell. This is McCarthy.
Governors. These Republican governors.
People who had the chance to at least let the truth be spoken, and they did not even allow that to happen. So giving by far the worst opportunity for Trump to claim that it was a fairly decided Senate vote not to convict him.
Well, they rigged both, right? So the first impeachment, the Ukraine gate, which he was guilty as sin on. I mean, he had his hand in the cookie jar. He has the perfect phone call. The Republicans both times were basically like his friends on a jury trial. Like, imagine you were on trial for some crime, and the jury was made up of half your friends. You're not getting convicted. In both impeachments, because he was impeached twice, insane. He was impeached twice. The Republicans basically rigged the Senate trial and the investigations, and I just mean rigged like they were never going to convict him.
Well, I mean, they made a fantastic case. The House Impeachment Committee, which was supposedly kind of bipartisan, but they obviously very favoring the Democrats, but they put together a fantastic bulletproof case. And the only reason that they did not allow the witnesses to be questioned by the Senate is because it was so open and shut.
Right.
So it was so
there was
clearly
no deniability. Right.
And the rest of the Republicans that didn't allow this to move forward, this is why I am no longer a Republican.
Well, remember, Mitch McConnell gave that whole speech. hey, he could still be prosecuted criminally. Now here comes the criminal prosecution. Hey, it's wrong. You shouldn't prosecute him criminally. They always play these games. That's what this Republic is. They define the term gaslighting, but they're bad at it. Like, so, like, they try to do gaslighting, but it's like a 7-year-old trying to gaslight. They're just like obvious about it and dumb. Like my dog tries to manipulate me in the same way. It's like not a smart way to go about it. So that's why it's also like insults your intelligence. If you're somebody who like has these beliefs about no matter what, that they maybe their right-wing beliefs, maybe their left-wing beliefs, when somebody is, again, I throw back, pissing on your leg and telling you it's raining, you know that. Americans aren't stupid. Like when they're being fed a line of BS, let me control my language, sorry. When they're being fed a line of BS, they're gonna understand it. There's been a non-stop line of BS for 8 years.
So
new and evolving.
Anyway, these are a few of the many reasons that I've taken a stronger look at Biden and have come to a very strong appreciation of the work that he's done in the face of an adversarial, I guess, party whose basic main goal was to not allow him to do anything. And he has gotten, not only has he gotten some things done, he's gotten monstrous amounts of things done. Can you name a few things?
Yeah, absolutely. So we call this the real art of the deal. And the reason why is because while Donald Trump had virtually no significant bipartisan legislation except for the COVID pandemic relief, which was basically Steve Mnuchin's Treasury and Nancy Pelosi worked it all out. So Democrats and Republicans. Aside from that, he had no real significant bipartisan laws. He had the tax cut, which was party lines, which blew going on $3 trillion in the budget. But Joe Biden, to circle back to the point, has a slew of historic bipartisan pieces of legislation. We talked about the PACT Act last week, which drastically increases veterans' health care, builds out new VAs, and covers a whole bunch of related illnesses from service. They have the bipartisan infrastructure law, which was the largest since the Highway Act. I mean, it's one of the biggest programs, 40,000 new jobs, 40,000 new infrastructure projects in America, including removing all the lead pipes in America. He did the CHIPS and Sciences Act, which is, we're going to remember this for decades. The entire COVID supply chain crisis revolved around a lot about our technology not being unable to come through the supply chain, which was broken, our microchip fuel technology, which is everything. It's your refrigerator, it's your phone, it's your car, it's your TV, it's everything, which drastically increased the prices of everything. The CHIPS and Sciences Act, a bipartisan bill, now law, not only puts tens of billions of dollars into scientific development in America, but it incentivized all these companies to bring microchip manufacturing back to America. So we can avoid these situations where, you know, the supply chain collapses and you can't get yourself a new phone. Situations like that. And what's also important is the national security elements. If you have countries that are the main makers of microchips potentially under the thumb of the CCP, that could cause issues in the future related to national security. So making microchips in America, again, is a huge, huge deal. Biden's done it. He also did the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. For 100 years, Congress couldn't get this thing done. Federalizing more federal hate crimes powers for the federal government to go after racist violence. They couldn't do it for 100 years. It got done. The Violence Against Women Act lapsed. Under Trump, Joe Biden got it reauthorized with bipartisan fashion. Codified gay marriage protections with the Respect for Marriage Act for gay marriage, so that these states can't get a favorable Supreme Court ruling and try to row out gay marriage. You know what I'm saying? They did. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. He's done it over and the Electoral Count Act. Part of Trump's scheme to try to do a coup involved holes in the Electoral Count Act. So they were using fraudulent legal justification. They plugged up those holes. I mean, that's how you make deals. That's how you do things. That's the real art of the deal. Working with another party that genuinely has no incentive to work with you and getting historic things accomplished for the American people and for the world. I mean, it's really hard to say more than that.
Well, as Americans living abroad, can we make a difference?
Absolutely. You've seen in 2020, these elections are closer than ever. We've broken into Arizona and Georgia as potentially trending purple. Maybe not, maybe so, but 2022 gave us some good information as well in those elections, those midterm elections. Every vote counts. If you win a state with 2 million votes by 10,000 votes, every vote counts. We've seen in New Hampshire and other states, seats were Pennsylvania, whole legislatures were decided by one seat. Whole elections were decided by one vote. Our votes absolutely matter, and we back up we're the easiest way to fight this fascist threat is by expats voting en masse. If we voted to our numbers, we'd be the most powerful group in America.
Now, tell me about Florida and women.
Oh, right. So because the state Supreme Court passed their ridiculous 6-week abortion ban, which is insane, how does anyone know they're pregnant in 6 weeks? They also approved the signatures for abortion protections to be voted on as a ballot initiative for the November election. So Florida is going to have an abortion amendment and legal cannabis on there up for votes. But Florida is a strange place. I can see both of those things winning and Trump still win, but not by as much. Because Florida has been doing things like that. They raised the minimum wage, but then they elected and reelected Ron DeSantis. Like it's a very interesting place. But there's a lot of abortion amendments all over the country right now in several states. Arizona, I believe, is working on another one. They'll more than exceed the numbers, and it's never lost. They don't lose. In a post-Dobbs world, we have to lock up these protections. You have to go by state, but you also have to go federally as well, because a federal abortion ban can override your state protections. So if you get enough senators that are Republicans and you get Trump as a president and you keep this House as Republicans, they will pass a national abortion ban that will throw your state abortion protections in the garbage. And you have to vote for Democrat. I know it sounds like a cheesy thing, but it is the guaranteed solution to all of this. If we show up and we replace aspiring fascist, sexist, bigoted radicals with normal center-left Democrats, left, center Democrats, we will solve this problem. It's the quickest and easiest way to solve it. The courts aren't doing it. The media is not doing it. The voters have to vote, and we have to do it. Expat votes are more necessary than ever. Please vote. I will help you vote.
Excellent. Oh yeah, congratulations on being a official federally government certified voting assistance.
Thank you.
What do you call it? Officer?
Yeah, well, we got our certificates of training to help people actually understand the federal postcard system and how to vote from abroad. So we've been officially trained. I have a whole fun certificate. I have to put it on my social medias. But yeah, I've been trained in that. I've been trained in a few other programs like Vote from Abroad as well. I've done those. I've taken classes under them. I've taken this class, which was for the federal postcard thing. So I feel pretty good about it. Looking forward to registering expats to vote.
So make sure you vote. Make sure you're registered. Just because you registered last year or in 2022 does not necessarily mean that you're registered to vote this year.
Yeah, you send it in every year just to be safe. It's insurance. Most of the time you're going to be fine, but there are different rules for different states. I would contact your local board of elections from where you last lived in America if you have an issue. But you can use the federal postcard system. You can use Vote from Abroad and some of these other really great organizations and people like us that are going to volunteer to help you make sure you can practice your rights, no matter how you feel about any of this. You have the right to vote. We're going to help.
All right, we're going to do this again next week?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Stay tuned. Thanks again.
Hey, thanks for having me. Hasta luego.
Adios. Make sure you register to vote. Regístrese.